Hola, hola, ¿cómo estás? Te doy la bienvenida al programa 94 de Espiral y me harías muy, muy feliz si lo recomiendas a tus amigos, me pones un like donde sea que lo escuches. Así podré llegar a más auditores. Hoy te tengo un regalo. Tienes la oportunidad de conocer en profundidad a un escritor de renombre mundial, André Aciman, a quien entrevisté hace 3 semanas en Santiago, en las oficinas de Random House, Chile, invitado para el Festival de Autores 2023. Él venía contento, después de un almuerzo píparo, donde probó el pisco sour, y muy contento por lo que estaba haciendo la gira en nuestro país, donde tuvo una agenda muy intensa y se reunió con varios medios y muchos jóvenes interesados en la escritura. André Aciman nació en Alejandría, Egipto, y además de escritor es profesor universitario, crítico literario y periodista. Sus raíces son judío-sefardí, y a los 14 años su familia tuvo que exiliarse en Italia. No tenían pasaporte egipcio, porque al ser judíos, ellos pasaban a otra categoría. Pertenecían a las comunidades extranjeras egiptizadas, mutamasirum, se dice. Pero bueno, tras la guerra entre Israel y Egipto en 1956, la llamada guerra del Canal de Suez, el antisemitismo fue insostenible y los Aciman en 1965 volaron a Italia como refugiados y el padre a París. En 1968, tan solo 3 años más tarde de llegar a Italia, se establecieron en Estados Unidos. En la casa paterna hablaban francés, estaban altamente identificados con Francia, también árabe, griego y ladino. La madre de André Aciman era sorda, lo que sin duda ha marcado hasta hoy su narrativa. ¿Cómo plasmar el silencio en las palabras? ¿Se puede vibrar con la música en este silencio vasto? Me contó que ella hablaba francés, pero solo con los labios, una lengua de bisílabos, monosílabos, muy precaria. Su padre, André Aciman, tenía una fábrica de tejidos. Era muy culto y lector. A él le debe su pasión por Marcel Proust, del que se ha hecho especialista. No solo lo ha leído innumerables veces, sino que ha dictado cursos sobre él en Bard College y ha traducido su obra. André Aciman es doctor en literatura comparada en la Universidad de Harvard. También fue profesor de literatura comparada y creativa en la Universidad de Princeton y Bard College. Hoy en el Graduate Center de la ciudad de Nueva York. Su primer libro lo publicó en 1995 y son sus memorias en Egipto. Se llama Lejos de Egipto, que en español lo encuentras con el sello Libros de la Asteroide. Y 12 años más tarde publicó su primera novela, Llámame por tu nombre, publicada por Alfaguara, un éxito mundial. Y luego siguió publicando muchísimo, como 8 Noches Blancas por Lumen, Harvard Square por Alfaguara, entre otras. Y recién este año salió un libro de ensayos que de verdad es precioso, o muy reales, también por Alfaguara. Si eres suscriptor a Oda, mi boletín, te lo puedes llevar. Está atento, suscríbete y sabrás cómo concursar. El único judaísmo que conoce André Aciman es el que ha conocido en Nueva York, porque en Egipto vivía una vida en que confesar ser judío era peligroso. Además, su padre odiaba la religión y lo que se practicaba venía por parte de sus abuelos. A este autor no le gustan las fiestas, los eventos multitudinarios y no asiste a matrimonios o a cualquier cosa en que haya más de 20 personas. Aunque tuvo que hacer una excepción con su hijo que se casó en septiembre. También ahora en esta conversación que tuvimos en Espiral, le sorprendió la pregunta que le hizo su hijo Alex, también escritor, sobre las lecturas. Y a mí me sorprendió su respuesta sobre a qué autores vivos lee. A ninguno, dijo. Como ves, podría contarte mucho más sobre Aciman. Por eso te invito a escuchar este fascinante encuentro. Y si no entiendes inglés, puedes leer la transcripción en mi página web www.karenkotner.com. Recuento personal. Desde el último programa de Espiral, con el cuestionario Espiral André Aciman, no me han sucedido grandes cosas. Más que nada sigo leyendo y leyendo, pero no estoy en nada que sea digno de contar aquí. A veces sucede con las lecturas y con la vida que pasan por tu alma y no te impactan. Eso sí, que a fin de mes viajaré con una amiga a la Feria del Libro de Guadalajara, con Francisca Jiménez, editora general de Ediciones Mis Raíces. La Feria del Libro de Guadalajara es una de las más importantes en el mundo hispano. Es la primera vez que estaré en una feria de este tipo. Claro, está la de Santiago y la de Londres, pero allí solo se transaban derechos de publicación. En cambio, la de Guadalajara es de libros, es decir, cientos y cientos de stands y charlas vinculadas con el mercado del libro. Así que en diciembre, cuando salga el próximo Espiral, estaré llena de novedades. Y espero también haber vuelto a la escritura. De verdad, cuánto lo deseo. Well, I'm very pleased to have you with me here in el podcast Espiral. Today we have André Aciman, which is an amazing author, which I admire, and I enjoy his prose, nonfiction and fiction. And today he's in Chile, very far away from wherever he lives or used to live.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here in Chile.
Oh, I always start this program asking the same question, but here we are in person. But anyway, I will ask it. What were you doing before you came here to Penguin Random House?
In the actual building, I was having lunch.
Oh.
And we were having a wonderful lunch. And we spoke about all manner of things, the interpreter and the person who accompanies me. And we stayed together for a good almost 2 hours, having a lovely, lovely time and relaxing.
What did you have for lunch?
I remember very well. I had eggplant or aubergine fried in a sandwich, which was totally unusual, but it was wonderful and I enjoyed it. And I had a pisco sour.
But it's very strong, pisco sour. I can't work with a pisco sour.
I normally don't work with alcohol in my system, especially when I'm giving a talk or an interview. But I was guaranteed that it would wear away rather fast. And I hope they were right.
Let's see.
We shall see. But I think it has already worn out.
Is this your first time in South America?
No, not in South America, but it's my first time in Chile, in Santiago especially.
So you have been working a lot during this last day. You have a hectic schedule, right?
Yes, very hectic and very intense. But then I don't like it when I travel to a place and it's not intense, because then I feel that it's wasted time, and there has been no wasted time. And I'm very happy that way.
And do you like this kind of traveling?
Oh, yes, I do very much.
Because
otherwise,
many authors don't like.
Oh, no, whatever authors do, it's none of my business. I like to travel. I like to meet people. I like to basically be enchanted by people and to try to enchant them as well. And last night I had a wonderful event with about 20 people who came for a meet and greet. And they were young and they were dynamic and they wanted to ask me questions. And I love that. And if it takes 2 hours, 3 hours, I don't care. I'm here for that. So it's been wonderful.
And are you going back home tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow evening I leave.
Good. In your personal essay in The New Yorker, 2014, Are You Listening? Conversations with My Deaf Mother, there are several aspects that mark you as a writer. Well, you are a Jew who grew up in Egypt, and at the age of 14, you ran away in exile. With that, you not only lost a territory, but an idea of a family and a belonging.
Yes.
Perhaps the best way to know a writer is researching about what his son wrote about him.
Okay.
This piece that I'm going to read appeared in the Table Mac, April 2023. And it was written by your son, Alex.
Okay.
Passover seders were always a thing that my father merely seemed to tolerate. A spectacle he watched, somewhat reluctantly, from the far end of the table. His well-known dislike of all liturgy, and especially of seders, has always made sense to me. For someone whose defining life experience was in his own expulsion from Egypt, the notion of earmarking a strangely similar Asian debacle must have seemed to him, admittedly, a little rich, especially given the one of his final memories of life in Alexandria, where was the last seder his family had while living in his grandmother's apartment. Time, sometimes, is too cyclical and too frustrating, ironic for its own good. But in spring 2013, barely 3 months after his mother died, the lifelong holdout changed his mind. He wanted to commemorate that final seder, to earmark his own historical debacle and his memory of a family that has now lost its matriarch. Did you know this piece?
My son does not necessarily let me read his pieces. He doesn't communicate with me about his pieces because I tend to edit them very heavily. So he avoids me, but he does eventually send me his piece when I beg for it. And I begged for it, and eventually I did get it.
And what do you feel about?
I think he's right. He is right, but I think he romanticizes it tiny bit in the sense that I've always hated religion. Religion has never spoken to me. I have no tolerance for religion, over any religion. I don't understand people who believe in God or who believe in religion, etc. My son basically was reacting to the death of his grandmother, my mother, whom I truly, truly loved very, very much. And probably, though I don't remember it, I might have wanted to celebrate her passing that year by having a Seder. But I hate Seders. I don't go to them any longer. I refuse to go. And when I'm invited, I don't go any longer. I just tell people that I don't like to attend any ceremony. And this includes bar mitzvahs, communions, and weddings of any kind. I don't like them.
Why?
Because I hate celebrations, and that's a good question. I don't like celebrating oneself, because ultimately this is what one is celebrating. And I've always felt a kind of reluctance to sort of create a big spectacle about one's own family, about one's own self, and one's own identity. I think that identity is something that one is normally ashamed of. And so one transforms it into something one is proud of and one is happy with, when in fact one doesn't really feel that way. I certainly haven't. And I don't like spectacles of any kind. And I think my children, I have 3 boys, have all of them, in one way or another, embraced my philosophy, which is not really a philosophy. It's just an attitude vis-a-vis celebrations. They get married, but they make fun of it.
What is for you Judaism?
I have no idea. The only Judaism I know is the one that I have encountered in New York City. Okay. Because before that, Judaism was something one hid. One didn't proclaim it because, of course, it was in an anti-Semitic country. You don't have to be very intelligent to realize that you have to conceal your Judaism. And so I concealed it. And as you grow up concealing your own identity, you become sort of inimical to the very identity that you're supposed to be proud of. I'm not going to blame having been born in Egypt, in an anti-Semitic country, for being anti-religion or anti-Jewish. I'm not a self-hating Jew, but at the same time, I discovered Judaism as a philosophy of life, as an ironic stand vis-a-vis life in New York City, not elsewhere.
Okay, that's interesting. And what did you find out in New York City about it?
It was not the rituals that I liked, because I hate rituals, and I think I've made that pretty clear. It's more that I don't like. Let me go back. What I discovered in New York City was that it was the first time in my life where I found that it was okay to be Jewish and to tell people that you're Jewish. And I am Jewish, there's no question about that. But at the same time, I have never been able to say that to people. Suddenly in New York City, it was not only accepted, but it was in fact encouraged to say that you were Jewish because you found out that other people are Jewish. One of the things that I noticed when I deal with my friends from Europe mostly is that they never tell me directly that they're Jewish. It takes them a few weeks, sometimes a few months, to finally admit to me that, oh, I'm Jewish too. So there is a kind of reluctance there. But in New York City, what I discovered about Judaism, and it's a very street Judaism, it's not the rabbinical Judaism that I was interested in, is that there was a sense of irony, and I mentioned that before, and a sense of irony about being Jewish that I had never seen before. And of course, it endorses my own sense of I'm sort of querulously Jewish. I don't want to be Jewish, but I am Jewish, and therefore I have to embrace it. But that very contradiction, that very paradox of wanting not to embrace Judaism and yet being Jewish, that paradox, in fact, defines the kind of Judaism that I adhere to. And ultimately, I believe that if you look at all our prophets and all the big names in Judaism, in the Bible especially, none of them liked being Jewish. None of them even liked God or liked the calling of being prophets. So there was a sort of an inherent reluctance to be Jewish in Judaism. And I believe that this kind of Judaism is the kind that I can experience, and it's the kind that I adhere to.
Do you think that your family had a role in this, or only Egypt?
My family had a role in it. My father celebrated Christmas. We celebrated Christmas at home. He did not celebrate Hanukkah, which is a Jewish holiday that I discovered in America. I had never even heard of Hanukkah.
Really?
Yes. And so this was totally different for me. But my father was a man who hated religion too, and who abominated religion, as I do. Without being vicious about it, he just didn't think about it, and he refused to think about it. And so he asked me one day, "Do you want to have a bar mitzvah?" He said to me, and I said, "No." He said, "Fine." And that was the end of that. He was asking me in a kind of pro forma manner whether I wanted to be a Jew or not, and I said no.
And do you have a spiritual life? I mean...
Yes. Oh, yes. A spiritual life can exist outside of religion.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, yes. No, absolutely. I have a spiritual life, but it's a very primitive spiritual life. A lot of it has to do with art. In other words, my commitment to art is visceral and it's inherent to who I am. At the same time, I'm also very superstitious, which is a form of primitive religion. I'm very superstitious, and I believe that one has to play with God, if there is a God, and pacify him and placate him if one can.
How?
By not telling him everything that one thinks. In other words, if you are superstitious the way I am, you must not know that you're superstitious, because if the God or whatever entity is out there, and there is an entity out there, though I don't believe it exists, but it's there, will eventually punish me for believing that I have found its opening, its key, or its sort of vulnerable spot where I can negotiate with it. So I must not visibly negotiate with whatever entity is out there. I have to pretend that I'm not negotiating. It is a very complicated thing.
I know, it seems, but what kind of superstition do you have?
Oh, I'm any superstition. For example, if something good happens to me when I cross the street on such and such a street, I will continue to cross the street on that side. But if I do it every time, meaning that it's a safe way to do it, I will get punished for doing that, because the whatever entity is out there will figure out that I have found its key and will punish me for considering that I have figured out.
So this force,
Yes.
it's a very strong force, very punitive.
Yes.
It's not like
But that is
bonding.
No, but the God of the Jews is
Okay,
not a friendly God.
I know, but well, that's true. That's true.
So I have rediscovered the God of the Jews, but differently, through another avenue.
And how are you living with the war in Israel?
I don't understand it. I know it's horrible. It's complicated, and I have decided that I don't have a political view because I'm not a political person. I don't understand politics. So I'd rather stay out of it than sort of get enmeshed in what is a situation that is highly, highly combustible.
Do you have family in Israel?
No.
Or relatives? No?
No,
Friends?
nothing.
So you don't have any active link to it?
No, I don't. And there's a reason why, because most of my family, all of my family, has moved to the West. No, nobody ever wanted to go to Israel, or if they did want to, they never did.
Let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
You said about your mother, she couldn't hear their laughter, but she read in their faces.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this language, not to the books I read or studied, but to my mother, who had no faith in it, and no talent of much patience for words.
Mm-hmm.
Deafness was a stigma. I'm going to cite right now a paragraph of Out of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
How much I envy other children for having mothers. Do you remember it?
Yes, of course.
For having mothers different of mine, sweet mothers, mothers who hear the answer of the phone, opened the door, and always commented something nice about your clothes, or about the weather, or about a movie that everyone saw. I was thinking, or perhaps trying to find a link between this death, this permanent silence, and your work. Is there any connection between your job, that is to write, a writer write in silence, we read in silence, and your mother?
Yes. There is very much of it.
It's not so crazy.
No, not at all. Not at all. You have to understand that my mother tried to read some of the things I wrote. And she said, this is too complicated. You go back and forth into the past, into the present. I can't read this. But she read my essays and she liked my essays. But my mother's language was not only primitive. I mean, she spoke French. Because she was deaf, but she had learned how to speak, and she could read your lips. Her language was fundamentally a deaf person's language. In other words, it was made of monosyllables, of bisyllables, and of words that didn't even exist. It was just sounds, or guttural sounds. And that is fundamentally the language that I understand. Yes, I speak Italian, I speak French, I speak English, I write in English. I'm pretty much a decent writer in English, but the fundamental language of my heart, which I no longer speak because my mother is dead, is the language that I spoke with my mother, which was a language of sounds, just sounds.
Can we recreate? Good morning. How are you? How was your day?
She would never have asked me that question. Oh. You know, because that's a hearing person's question.
Okay.
No, but it's not. It's like, did you sleep well? Did you sleep well? She would ask me that in French, and then she would come to me and kiss me. And even as I'm a grown man, if I happen to sleep in her house, she would say, "It's nice to have you here. I love smelling the smell of your shaving cream. I could smell it, and I knew you were home." And so my mother was a very sort of tactile human being, and her language was visceral in the sense that it was never made of sentences over whole sentences. It was just sentence snippets, fragments of language, and then always a sound like which meant I love you. She would never say I love you. That is a stupid thing to say to someone.
Why do you think your father married your mother?
Oh, my mother was a very beautiful woman, a very, very beautiful
She
woman.
used to dance, right?
She used to dance. She was a very active woman. She had become a nurse during the war, and she was very independent. And she was a very strong woman. And all the women in my family were very, very strong, and that's why I've always liked very strong women. But at the same time, she was beautiful, and she yesed my father. My father would give her a book on the history of literature. She would read it overnight. Of course, she didn't read it. And she would tell him, I loved it, I enjoyed it. And he believed her, at least for a while. After a while, he decided that she was the wrong woman for him. And I think they parted ways, but they never divorced, they never separated. And they stayed married together for 60 years, fighting every single day.
Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. How?
Because I understood that my father was stuck in a wedding that he couldn't liberate himself from. He was not happy with his wife. I understood his unhappiness, and I understood my mother's own fidelity, if you want to call it that, her obstinate fidelity to stay with my father, whatever happens. She was not going to give up her name. And so I understood both their positions. And when they've quarreled and I would speak to one and I would speak to the other, I always agreed with them because every point of view was correct.
Did you suffer?
Yes, because you grew up in a family where everybody basically quarreled all the time.
That's very difficult.
Well, yes, it is very difficult.
And do you quarrel all the time with your wife, Susan?
No, we don't. We don't quarrel. We've reached a plateau where we avoid quarreling because quarreling comes very natural to me. It does not come natural to my wife. So
that's a very good match.
I don't know. I don't know. But it's her basically her attitude is we don't yell, we don't shout, and my parents shouted and yelled all the time.
Your father loved classical music, but your mother had never been to a concert, right?
That's right.
He read long Russian novels and other French writers whose prose was cadenced and brilliant. I feel that music, it's a very important part of your writing,
Yes.
right? Does this become from your father? Well, your mother danced, but how do you integrate this writing and music?
And music. Well, my father encouraged one writer in particular. Of all the writers, he encouraged me to read, and he was extremely well read. He told me that I should read Proust, and I deferred reading Proust because I knew that he was going to speak to me right away. And at the age of 16, 17, I started reading Proust. And I realized, of course, that the sentences were extremely musical, so I wanted to please my father by writing musical prose. But I don't think it was just to please him. It was because I think I was drawn to musical prose. And therefore, when I discovered Virginia Woolf, I said, oh, this is musical prose. When I discovered James Joyce, I said, that is also musical prose. And so this was a leaning that I had that took me to these writers. But by and large, to go back to my mother, music is a way of confirming that I have no business with my mother. In other words, it's because she could not understand music. She had no idea what music was. And so she would ask me sometimes, what is it that you hear when you hear Beethoven? And I said, Mom, I don't know how to explain it to you. And I tried to because I loved her. And I was trying to sort of show her something about rhythm and pounding.
Okay, so in your writings, you are trying to show her a little bit of this music.
Maybe, but I don't think so. I think I'm more or less cutting her off, saying, you don't understand that this is not your world. I'm just going to explore a different world. And by the way, my father likes it a lot.
Did your father read what?
Yes.
Yes.
He read a lot of what I wrote, and he liked what I wrote.
He liked it. And when did you realize you want to become a writer?
Oh, I think...
Realize?
No, I think I've always known. Until I was 9, 10 years old. I wrote,
young.
Yes, I wrote a poem, a long poem. And my father said, oh my God, you're a great poet. It's fantastic that you're writing poetry. Of course, I read the poem later and I said, oh my God, this is dreadful. But the compliment meant a lot to me. And I think it may have even drawn me into the profession of being a writer. I didn't become a writer right away. I waited about 30 years to become a writer.
Yes, because Susan told you.
No, Susan made it possible for me to write a dissertation.
Oh.
She basically said, why don't you finish your dissertation?
Okay.
And I said, okay, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Because I didn't take myself seriously. And eventually, yes, she did tell me, why don't you write a book about your childhood? And yes, that's
out of Egypt.
Yes. And so, but many people had told me to write about my childhood in Egypt, but I needed to find the voice for the book. And I had written already long before I met Susan that I had written a book about growing up in Egypt. And it was a bad book, terrible book. But nevertheless, it was an attempt to write this life. And I knew that I had to do that, at least as a beginning. And I did.
What did you like about Egypt?
Nothing. I would very little. I did like the life we led. It was a lovely life. Especially when we had the means to support that life. But eventually it became very difficult to live in Egypt. And so I wanted to get out. And I think my father and my mother did not want to get out because it was a very comfortable lifestyle, even though they had lost all their money.
Even so.
Yeah, they still wanted to live there. They had made friends. They had a lifestyle that they liked. And I think they could have continued to live modestly, but they could have continued to stay in Egypt. I just wanted to get out.
Did you like Rome? Because you are in love with Rome.
Initially, I'd hated it. I hated Rome because it was a poor man's Rome that I was put into. But eventually, I discovered Rome. I discovered myself in Rome. Rome was...
You became like a grown-up man in Rome.
Yes, I became a grown-up.
That's what it means, Rome.
Yes.
It's a very interesting piece about Rome.
Yes, and it was basically, I loved Rome. It was an ancient city, but it had enough antiquity and modernism at the same time. So I loved the combination of the two. And I loved the artwork in Rome. The statues were fantastic. And of course, I met people in Rome, and I began to be drawn to them. And that became also some part of Rome for me.
And what do you like about New York City?
Again, you're asking me very complicated questions.
I know. That's why I'm here.
Because I don't know what I like about New York. I don't know what I like about Rome. Certainly, I don't know at all what I could have liked about Egypt. But in New York City, I like the pace, I like the rhythm, and I like the life I've built.
Do you like the pace?
I do like the pace.
Very fast pace.
It seems fast. It's not that fast. But it is a pace that agrees with me. And I like when I came to New York the first time, I became instantly drawn to the cousins that I had. Immediately invited me over for dinner. Come next week, but come. And it wasn't just come next week, maybe next week, the week after, whatever. It was like, come on the 13th. And
it was like having, again, the family you lost in Egypt.
Well, but I had more family in France. But the family I had in New York was not one that I was proud of, but I liked the pace that they set. And I liked the fact that the first week I was in New York, I took my brother out because I had a job already. Where do you get a job right away? And I had a job and I took him out to the movies. We went to see a movie together and we went again to another movie. So it was... Initially, we were suddenly established in a city that was totally foreign to us, but established, which had never happened before.
Do you see yourself as a New Yorker?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I am a New Yorker because no New Yorker considers himself a New Yorker.
Yes, I agree with that.
And therefore, I am in that respect a New Yorker.
Well, let's go back to, I think you should be a little bit tired about talking about Call Me By Your Name.
Okay.
But this huge success, I can imagine what happens inside of a person when you have this kind of impact.
Mm.
But I was thinking what to ask you about it. How did you manage to capture these types of relationships linked to the homosexual world so assertively? Well, I'm not gay, so I'm supposing that it's true, but it feels so real.
I think that's what a good writer does. Ultimately, whether it is a true story or not a true story, and I've said this many times, is insignificant. It's how do you conceive and how do you communicate desire and emotions accurately enough to capture something that most people feel and have no words for. And I think it has to do with the act of writing itself. It is not necessarily, and I hate to say this, it's not necessarily whether you lived it or not. And I don't like to discuss my personal life, but it is, I think it has to do with how do you write about the desire of a young man for a slightly older man? And how slightly, because you're only 7 years older. And how do you communicate that in a manner that is so persuasive that people will eventually not only feel desire themselves, but how ultimately cry when they read about it?
Do you think this huge success is something difficult to live with when you are starting to write a new book or you are going to publish a new book? Because we are humans and say, oh my God, this is not so good. This is not going to be a success. It's not going to, like the critics will not, I don't know, all the fears we have, the insecurities.
Well, I'm a champion of insecurities, and therefore...
I heard about it.
Yeah, so I'm totally insecure, and therefore I'm an insecure writer by definition. And just to give you the simplest example I can think of, when I wrote Call Me By Your Name, I went to my agent and I told her, I've written a novel, but it's a story about gay love. And if you think it's ridiculous, I will not publish it. I will put it in my drawer and never speak about it again. So I was so insecure about this book that I thought it will die eventually. And she said, no, send it to me, I'll read it. And she read it overnight. Overnight, she read it. And she told me, I'm going to sell this book. And she did.
Wow, she did it.
Yeah.
But from all your books, which one is your baby? You really are fond of it, like.
It's not Call Me By Your Name. It is a book that I wrote with great difficulty because I had to excavate it out of myself. And so it took a while to write it. It took about 1.5 years to write. And it's called 8 White Nights. And nobody reads it because it is so, in a sense, turgid. And it's a difficult book. And it's a book that basically goes nowhere because it's about a young man who meets a woman at a party. And it is clear that they have to sleep together.
Well, it's like the director you are talk about in
Oh, yes.
Cómo, I don't remember his name.
Romer.
Because I'm very bad for names, but...
Yeah, no, Eric Romer is exactly the same thing. And I identified with Eric Romer when I saw the film when I was 20 years old. I immediately said, this is for me. Because it is desire, you have the person is available, and you still hesitate. And that has been my signature throughout life. You hesitate before the things that are offered to you, and you are reluctant to seize them. At least you want them to insist again, and maybe insist a third time before you capitulate and accept them.
So if you're this kind of insecure, should be very difficult to write and to be sure that you're writing something good.
No, you never are. No, of course not.
So you need a third party.
Yes, I need a person to tell me, you know what, this is damn good. I said, no, you're wrong. You just don't understand. No, it's very good. And at that point, I may begin to accept myself and to accept the fact that I've written this book. But everything I write with the certainty that it will be a flop.
What is the relationship between being older and desire?
None. There is there is no conflict between the two.
Okay.
You can be, as I am, I'm older, I'm very much older, but I can still feel what I felt when I was 17 or 14. I want to continue to feel that way because otherwise I've turned a page and I don't know what awaits me afterwards. But I don't think, I wrote Call Me By Your Name when I was already in my middle 50s. And
Very late for a writer.
Well, it's late for a writer, but it's to write about an adolescence at the age of 55. People say, how could you sort of move? So it's very simple. It's not difficult at all.
Do you enjoy life?
I don't know.
What do you know?
Very little, very, very little. But to answer your question, I write about the duty to enjoy life, but I'm not convinced that anyone enjoys life.
When your kids were small, I figure that you enjoy life with them.
Oh, I still do. I still enjoy them very, very much. I enjoy them tremendously. And I have 3 boys that I love profoundly. And 2 are married and 1 is getting married. So
one got married in September, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And the other one got married in April.
Oh, the same year.
Yes. And
even though you don't like ceremonies, they got married.
I said to them that I'm going to go to 3 ceremonies, wedding ceremonies. 1 is yours, 1 is yours, and the 3rd one is coming up, after which I will never go again to another wedding.
I don't believe you.
Yes, you better believe me because I practice that. I don't go to anyone's wedding and they do get upset. My friends get upset. They said, you're insulting me by not coming to my wedding, my son's or my daughter's wedding. And I said, no, you don't understand. You insult me by forcing me to sit at a table where I hear loud music and I get very bored and I have no business being there.
So you're very authentic.
I try to be.
And Susan goes to the weddings?
She likes to go to weddings.
So
yes.
She goes
by herself. Yes.
Good. Did you enjoy the ceremony of your...
My sons?
Yes.
Yes. One in particular I enjoyed a lot because there were fewer people and it was very, very personal. The other one was also very nice. I love my children and I love their wives and I enjoy the fact that they got married. I like that they're married, that they're also, 2 of them are living very near me. So I'm happy about that. And but ultimately I don't like weddings. I don't like ceremonies. And there was, in fact, my sons don't like ceremonies either. And so there was no noise. I hate noise.
But you like music.
Yes, but I don't like noisy music.
I agree. I don't like noise.
Yes.
And what about your funeral?
I leave that to other people to consider. I do think that it is important to think that one is going to be buried in a place that means something to the living person who's not dead yet. So in point of fact, I would love to be buried in Rome.
Oh.
But unfortunately, I have to die in Rome in order for that to happen.
Okay.
And that is not going to happen. I hope not.
You are not planning to live in Rome?
No.
This is a surprise.
Okay.
Hi, Dad. It's Alex. My question is, what is your favorite book that you ever read to us when we were kids?
Did I read to them a book that they liked? I told them stories from one book in particular.
Which one?
It was the Iliad. But I know I read to him Proust when he was very, very young. And he wrote back to me. He had my wife write to me because he couldn't write. He was still too young to write. And he quoted to her his version of what I had said in English, the first initial sentence of Proust. He must have been 4 years old.
But it's kind of...
I don't remember.
Do you remember reading? Reading to your kids?
I didn't read to them so much. My wife read to them. I told them stories, and I would make up the stories as we were going along. But I don't remember reading to them a lot. I remember reading the Iliad and the Odyssey to them, but I don't remember what it was.
Do they like now the Proust and Iliad and everything?
I don't know. I don't know. I think that they don't. One of them, Alex, the one you quoted, is the one who's he writes about classical literature. So he's very much sort of enmeshed in it. But I don't remember. If you can remind me what it is that I read to them, I have no idea.
Well, I was thinking about his question, and wow. Okay, I remember one or two books I used to read to my kids, but when you're not a father, you don't realize that so many days has passed and so many things beyond that it's a very difficult question.
It is a difficult question, but I don't remember what the book was.
But it's the first time someone asked that. I was surprised about the question. I mean, it was so simple and beautiful question because he wants to get in touch with his childhood and you.
Yes. But I told him stories, and I would tell him stories that I wouldn't tell his brothers who slept together because they slept in different rooms. And he was basically very privileged in getting information about the great books, the great works. When he was, 3-4 years old, I was already trying to get him to understand that there are great books and there are very mediocre books.
And do you remember any story, or is any story written?
Any story
written by you, or just
that I read to him my stories? I don't think I read to him stories that I had written. I told him stories, and I would sometimes narrate stories about the Iliad and the Odyssey. I know.
Okay, perfect. I understand. In the newspaper Haaretz in 2019, the title goes, André Aciman on the parallels between Jews and gays, and his Call Me By Your Name sequel. Can you explain me that?
I think it's obvious, and I'm reacting to something that is very much in Proust, and it has influenced me too. In other words, I think that gays and Jews are fundamentally condemned, and because they're condemned or they're not accepted, and I think until today, except for certain parts of the world where they are accepted, when it's okay, etc., in most parts of the world, it's still a difficult lifestyle to be gay or to be a Jew. And I think that in both cases, a Jew and a gay man have a way of understanding whether someone else is like them or not like them. And that is the part that I draw from my own personal experience and also from the experience of Proust, who writes about Jews and gays having similar, if not common, lifestyles to live. And so they hide it, and at the same time they find ways of revealing it to someone else that they suspect is like them.
How many times have you read Proust?
Read Proust? Oh my God.
Oh my God. No, I don't want to know. So that's oh my God.
No, it's too many times because I teach Proust. And therefore, I have to reread it every time. I don't necessarily reread the whole thing. Though the last time I taught Proust, I had to reread it because I was beginning to remember only the same scenes.
Okay. At the end of the career, Philip Roth stopped writing. He decided to stop writing. What do you think about it?
You want my honest opinion?
Yes, of course.
No, because you're not going to get, it's not going to be flowery. I think he should have stopped writing a long time before. I think he
lost it.
No, he didn't lose it because he never had it to lose. I never liked him. I never liked that kind of writing. I think it was facile, easy, simple. Never would he have been able to publish anything in France had he not been an American writer. He's very famous in France, but I don't like his writing at all. And I found him basically turgid. Simple is not good enough. I find him mediocre.
And Saul Bellow?
I don't like Saul Bellow either.
Which one do you like?
Of that particular triad of writers, Malamud, Bellow, and
Yes.
Roth, I don't like any of them. They're not for me. They're writing in a different style altogether that is not clearly. And I include Hemingway and possibly Fitzgerald as well in that club of writers that I don't like.
Which one do you like?
Oh,
Besides Proust.
well, when you say Proust, it's like saying you like Shakespeare.
Yes.
You're basically liking or Dante. You're saying that you like something that's grandiose. I don't like. I don't have patience for mediocre writers or for lesser writers. Let's call them that, lesser writers. I wrote my dissertation on a woman called Madame de Lafayette, and I happen to have loved her book. I still think it's one of the best books ever written in French. And it was written about 3.5 centuries ago. So you're talking about a classic that has withheld through time. And it's a very strong book. And it's a very short book. It's not even long. So I like excellence in writing. And if somebody's not excellent, I don't like them. I think that some of the essays that Camus wrote are excellent. Not all his novels are excellent. I think some of them are actually quite trivial. But some of the things he wrote are sublime.
Can you tell me which one?
I think that there's a story he wrote about growing up in Algiers, in Oran. But it's not the Dernier Homme, which is the last book that was found in the car. Mm-hmm. It was an earlier version of the same book, which is fantastic. I think that he wrote an essay about going to the beach, returning to the beach, which was wonderful. And he wrote an essay on boxing. Not realizing that he was intentionally not imitating Hemingway. It was a fantastic essay. But you're talking about a great writer, and clearly a very gifted writer who could have done fantastic things. I think, as in the case of so many writers, they get hoodwinked or misdirected by success in one form or another. In his case, it was the existentialists. It was a waste of time for him. He was not an existentialist. He shouldn't even have touched it. And I think that Roland Barthes, same thing, great, great mind who wasted his time with semiology.
So, do you read contemporary writers or do you skip them?
You know I don't read contemporary writers. Occasionally I do read. And as I said in Homo Irrealis, one of the writers that I like a lot is Sebald. And he died 20 years ago. So that is as contemporary as I get. And I discovered him by sheer accident.
Well, Sebald is extraordinary.
Well, yes, but I know extraordinary and I like extraordinary. I don't like lesser writers.
And do you feel like kind of awkward when someone approached to you? Oh, you must read this book.
Yes.
What do you tell this person?
It depends. If I'm polite at that moment, I would say, yes, I will read it.
Okay.
And if I'm trying to not really listen to them, I would say, sorry, I don't read contemporary writers.
I admire you because we are all the time, I read a lot.
You have to, yes.
So it's like, oh, you should read this and that. And I just read Dante.
Oh, well.
I am reading Dante. I read El Quijote.
Okay,
but
yeah.
with help, with a teacher. It's an amazing...
Quixote is wonderful. It's one of the greatest books ever.
But you should be into it, and it really requires you to use your head, your heart, everything. It's not like something you go and pass by. No. So we should choose what we want to read. And
Yeah.
that's very... How do you organize your time?
I don't really organize it, but it is organized for me by sheer fact that I spend time writing. I write all day long if I can. I also write letters of recommendation. I write letters
In the afternoon.
It depends. It depends when I want to do it, and I don't have a schedule. I have friends, which I'm very lucky to have, and therefore I meet them. Sometimes they come over for dinner, which I love to do, and sometimes I have lunch with them, quick lunches, and the rest of the time if I'm not involved with the academy and the scholarship, etc., I am basically riding my bicycle. And when I ride my bicycle, I listen to books.
You can listen to
Yes.
books while oh my God. I'm going to in Homo Realis, you mentioned the problem of being in a place while missing it.
Yeah.
Or the people we were before versus the people we are now. What kind of person are you right now? Where are you right now?
I don't know. I mean, this is a very complicated question. I am Santiago right now.
Of course.
Okay.
Both of us, but perhaps I am thinking about dinner at home.
No, I'm not thinking about dinner. It depends. It's a tricky question because, to be honest with you, I don't know how to answer that question because who am I? I don't know. Who I was, who I could have been are different aspects of
But
the
I
same.
think you know something about you.
Oh, yes. I know something about myself. I know what kind of a personality I have.
Okay.
Okay, but that's not who I am. In other words, my personality
Okay, I understand.
is an aspect of myself. I don't know who I am.
What do you want, to be remembered as a writer, not as a person?
As a writer, if I could, I would like people to say he wrote beautifully about things that we're very ashamed of. And that we're not even ashamed, we are just, we don't want to speak about those things that he writes about quite well. And I know I do.
Well, you are not so insecure.
I'm
Because
arrogant.
you know.
No, I'm arrogant, which means I am very insecure.
Nostalgia. It's another issue, another theme here. I love this book.
Thank
I
you.
love it. Both, but how do you live at your age nostalgia? Do you have nostalgia?
No, that's the irony of the whole thing. I am called a nostalgist. I am not nostalgic.
But do you feel nostalgious for nostalgia? Would you like to have it?
No, not really. Because, on the other hand, after everything we've discussed today, I happen to be a person who likes living in the present, who likes many things. I used to like tennis. I can't play tennis anymore because my knees hurt. But I like many things. I like good foods. I like good wines. I like good drinks. I like good people. I wish I knew more people because I can accommodate them. But by and large, I like intimacy with people. I like being very close to people. And I've been lucky in that respect. So that's one person. A nostalgist is somebody who doesn't live in the present. He lives in some kind of imagined past.
It's like Proust.
Proust probably was not a happy person. I don't think he was happy. I don't think he ever had a relationship with anybody except his mother. And even then, we're not so sure it was a great relationship. But by and large, I have a family. I like my family. And I like having had a family. The real issue is with nostalgia is that I don't think of the past. You would think, I write about the past all the time, and I'm drawn to the past, but it's simply an affectation that allows me to write about what it is that I like.
It's like a tool.
It has become more like a tool. For example, I like to tell the story that I am known to be a travel writer. I write about travel. I've stopped writing about travel, but I've been sent on travels. And in a sense, when I go away, I see a wonderful place and I try to write about it. I can't write about it. I write about it once I'm back in New York. And that's not because I have nostalgia for what happened. It's that I begin to see clearly where I, as a human being, connected with a particular city or a particular town or particular street. What meant to me that particular moment.
So perhaps you are going to write about Santiago.
Eventually, maybe I am. Maybe I will. I cannot write about it now because it's in the present.
You need time.
I need time. I need distance. I need also to introduce myself into the city before it becomes alive to me. And the irony of all this is that once it becomes alive to me with myself, everybody else says, that is the Santiago I know. That is the Santiago I've always met when I lived there. And yet, ironically, it is not their Santiago,
No.
It is mine.
Of course.
Yeah.
And do you write when you are traveling or?
When I'm traveling, no, I can't. It's immaterial. I don't have notes. I don't take notes.
Oh, you don't take even
No,
notes?
no.
Nothing.
There's nothing to say. I have nothing to say. I only have something to say when I struggle to remember what it is that I saw, what caught me. And usually it is something that has to do with my own life, my own childhood perhaps, that suddenly intimated with the city. And then I bring it out. And people tell me, they always tell me, this is the Rome I know.
Yeah.
But it's not your Rome, it's my Rome.
How many hours do you read?
Do I read? Not many.
Not bad.
Not many. I used to read a lot when I was young. When I was 14, 15, 16, and 17, I read an amazing amount of time. But I always read classics. So I had in my background, my bones, the classics were always speaking to me. I never was interested in...
We should be reading more classics.
We definitely should be, but nobody does.
A little group of people,
Oh, no, I know. A small...
but nobody does.
No,
It's very difficult.
The majority of people don't read classics.
No.
And so they read contemporary prose. And as I like to say, if I run into somebody in the subway and I see they're reading a book and they're reading a modern book, I like to tell them, why are you reading this? Why don't you read a classic instead? But they don't want to.
And what are you reading right now?
I'm reading Virginia Woolf.
Which one?
I'm rereading, of course, many times. I've read it many times. I'm rereading To the Lighthouse.
Oh,
which
it's a beautiful.
Which is, yeah.
It's a beautiful text.
Yes, it's up to a point. It's beautiful. It's troubled
Why?
because I think that it's the journey to the lighthouse that is the stunning moment of the book. And Mrs. What's her name? Not Mrs. Dalloway.
No, I'm very bad for the name.
Okay,
so
well, forget it.
Don't watch me. And
Mrs.
ask-
Ramsey. Mrs. Ramsey is a fantastic character. And then the last two segments of the book are about art and whatever. And I just find it rebarbative.
But I think that the form is written.
Yes.
It's amazing.
She's a great writer.
It's a
She's a great
great piece.
writer. Yes.
Can you tell us what are you working right now? And because you told me you are going to publish next year and afterwards, so I forgot. Can you?
There are
Refresh it.
three novellas that are coming out, especially in the Spanish language. They're coming out in 25. And in 24, there is one book. It's a memoir of my year in Rome.
In Rome.
Yes, so I write...
Your Rome.
Of course it's my Rome. It's not everybody's Rome, but I hope that people will say, yeah, this is a Rome I know. But
And what are you writing about right now? Or are you without any project?
I hope I have a project, but I'm writing a story about an older man who is interviewing a younger man for college.
Wow.
And
Very interesting. In these days or?
No, in these days. In these days.
Very interesting.
We shall see what happens.
Qué encuentro más hermoso. André Aciman es un hombre muy tranquilo, que te hace sentir bien. Voy a estar atenta a sus nuevas publicaciones, sobre todo a las memorias de Roma, la continuación de Lejos de Egipto. ¡Chao!